The only cheat I've ever used was the one, so that way I wouldn't have to get all the 101 crows, which granted 50 of them are just achievements, that's not a big deal. It's the crows that you actually have to find in the game that I have yet to do, especially because some of them you can only get on upper difficulties, and that the upper difficulties, like I said, are pretty crazy, especially when you get to non-stop infinite climax with its extreme lack of witch time, and the fact that it tells you that in a very, very rude way is actually quite humorous. It made me laugh. I mean, I knew what I was getting myself into because before I had even acquired the game, I had seen a Let's Play of someone who did a Let's Play of the game on the PlayStation 3 version, because I wanted to see what, like, the big issue was with it, if there really was a big issue or whatnot, or if people were just exaggerating. And it turns out that it does indeed have a bunch of really bothersome issues. So if you're thinking about getting this game of any sort, do not get it on the PlayStation 3 version, for it has multiple instances of frame rate drops, and the textures they don't really pop as well as the other ones. You have some really muddy textures, watered down. It's just not a whole lot of fun to look at. Now, from what I've seen and what I've played, because I've actually played the PS3 version of Bayonetta, it's not really performance hindering. It's just that, you know, why bother when you can go out and you can get the vastly superior 360 version, or even this one, which in reality doesn't perform as well as the Xbox 360 version. From the bit that I've played, I've noticed every now and then that I'll have frame rate drops, whereas in the PlayStation, the Xbox version, the frame rate drops were non-existent, with the exception of a couple really tough, I can't think of a word, but basically they're cutscenes, and there's actually one coming up at the end of this chapter that I will give mention to because the frame rate will drop in this one too, assuming that it stays consistent with what I have had in the test playthroughs, or assuming that I'm even correct and that the frame rate is actually dropping, and it's not just some form of slow motion or just something else that the game does, or if I'm just completely stupid, but you never know. You never know. Anyway, so the main reason I haven't switched up the Bayonetta's outfit like I had wanted to, or had planned to do this for a little while, is because this chapter you acquire a very special sort of weapon. It's not real great if you want high combo scores, because it kills the enemies too fast. Basically, it does a lot of damage. But that LP we just got, once we get to the Gates of Hell, which there's a store right around here, it turns into the Demon Sword Shiraba, and it has a very, or I guess I should say it like this, and that this costume has a very special effect on this weapon.
Another LP? Working me to the bone. But no need to pity me. I was bored anyways. Let me go whip some things into shape for you. This took a bit of pound into shape, but the workmanship's solid. Now, go put this thing to good use.
And just like that, we have the Demon Sword Shiraba. Now, it's not gonna show it here what it does, because, well, we're not out. It's a purely a cosmetic effect, and it's actually a really cool cosmetic effect. I'm just gonna buy up these techniques because I don't use all of them all that often, and with these three being the most important ones to me aside from, you know, air dodge. But you're going to want to purchase all the techniques at some point or another, simply so that way you have them and it's not just another thing that you'll have to save Halo. Alright, now, as I stated, when you wear and don up the Hero of Time outfit and you equip Shiraba, it has a very interesting cosmetic effect to it. As you can see here, the sword itself is just some kind of katana thing, but when you wear the Hero of Time outfit, it becomes the Master Sword! Does it do anything different? No, it really doesn't. It just looks like the Master Sword. It's really cool, but as I stated, it's not great for combo whatsoever. Now I'm going to see if I can do this one without getting absolutely nailed, because every single time I've attempted this chapter, for whatever reason, one of them decides it's going to hit really fast out of the blue, and I don't dodge it because my reflexes are terrible and whatnot. I accidentally opened that chest right there, which has a broken moon pearl in it. It's all good. It's all good. We still acquired it. And that was actually a pretty good run of that verse. Surprisingly enough, like I said, I usually get blindsided by one of them because he's just like, hey, smack! No time to react whatsoever, and the fact that I do not have a particular ability makes it significantly more difficult to dodge. I never realized until I started doing this that when I don't have access to the ability, how much I actually used that ability. And I'll just go ahead and say what it is because we won't get it till much later. It's an ability called Bat Within. And what it does is it increases your time to dodge enemy attacks by fractions of a second, by basically making it so that instead of dodging right beforehand, you are now able to dodge the second you get hit. And I never realized how much I actually rely on that until I don't have it. And I don't like that. A lot of these hits, normally, I would have just avoided altogether because I would have had the Bat Within and I would have just burst into a million different bats and boom. Another advantage that it has is when you actually do that, instead of filling up one magic orb, it actually fills up two. But I don't notice it very often. I don't pay too much attention to my magic meter. I just know that when the prompt comes up for torture attack, I am much more likely to get it. Alright, this chapter, this Alpine portal, I'm gonna cheat just a little bit. If you sit here and you spam this attack a lot, it makes the fight significantly easier. You're not gonna get a really good score from it, but, you know, I do what I can to complete it. I've never been able to complete it any other way, unfortunately. I know there are, because, well, you obviously have to be able to get pure platinum and everything. At least I would hope that they set it up so that you could get pure platinum and everything. That's what I do. You're only going to get, like I said, a gold. You're going to get a maximum of gold if you do exactly what I did. That was actually unnaturally good for my normal skill in that I usually take at least one hit, because what he do, those guys have an attack where they'll suddenly kick out their leg from under you. What? Either way. Anyway, they'll kick a leg out at you, and I usually just think that it's a step, but it is most definitely not a step. And I take a hit, and then I feel sad most of the time, because those are easy to avoid. You can't get witch time for dodging it, but it's still easy to avoid. Therefore, I should avoid it. Alright. So, since I'm here in this chapter, I'll just go ahead and explain how the cheat codes work. Basically, you have three payphones. You have one here, and you have one over that direction somewhere. And when you have the required amount of halos for whatever cheat you want, you go to the corresponding phone, because each phone corresponds to a different thing. One of them is for weapons, one of them is for items, accessories, and this phone, I believe, right here, this one is for characters. I don't remember which one's which, but basically you have the correct amount of halos, which I think the minimum is 1,000,000 halos, all the way up to I think the maximum item is 5,000,000 halos. And you go up to that and you perform the cheat with the halos. The halos are automatically deducted and you unlock whatever corresponding cheat code you just acquired. And this is what I meant in an earlier part by backtracking. This Alpine portal did not exist here until, I believe, until we cleared the chapter or the verse with the two beloveds. And this is the Alpine portal that I mentioned earlier in this chapter that I am probably going to fail because I have not had such great luck with it. I'm also probably not using a really good technique to do it, but basically what I like to do is I sit here and oops, and that's exactly what I mean by now I've pretty much guaranteed myself a failure unless if I can pull some crazy stuff and do things like that. But I sit here and I spam breakdance over and over and over. I don't know why, but my orbs seem to fill up significantly faster when I do that. You wanna try to dodge everything you possibly can. You wanna try to kill enemies as little as possible before you use your torture attacks. And then those big guys, use them as bullet sponges. Do not, and there's my failure, but not in the way I intended. Do not torture attack them unless if they're almost dead. You want them for bullet sponges, so that way you can build up your meter significantly, and you're less likely to kill these little ones, and if you kill all of these little ones, then you're not going to have enough of torture attacks, because as you can see there, you have to perform 6 torture attacks beforehand. And like I stated earlier, you have two limits when it comes to this. You have the time limit, which you should never run out of time. It's really easy to kill all the enemies if that's the issue. And there are a limited amount of enemies that actually spawn, so it's not just infinite go until your torture attack thing, until you perform 6 torture attacks, because you can actually perform more than the required torture attacks. It doesn't grant you anything extra, it's just you did it. Congratulations, yippee skippy. But if you run out of enemies before you perform all your torture attacks, you can't win, and it fails you. And it's quite the kick in the teeth, honestly. Especially when you know it's that last enemy. When it's that last enemy and you have 5, pretty much do anything you can in your power to not hurt him at all. Which really just means sit there and let him attack you, dodge him for which time, because as I said before, every time you dodge an enemy, you get an orb, which is actually why I'm doing really well here, except for that I got hit. That's not a good sign. But we're not really, this might actually, no, yes, this is, excuse me, my mind is just elsewhere. This is the last one. When you use your torture attacks, obviously it's kind of hard to pick out enemies unless if you're paying really nice attention to where your lock-on is. I never do that because, well, that's just not how I did it. And I should have used this one on the big guy because it's the last torture attack that I have to perform. But basically, do what you can, and when you use your torture attacks, try to hit the small enemies that are almost dead, because you just want to have just as much bullet sponge as you can, really. Bullets are the easiest way I find to fill up the magic meter. Anyway, with that completed, we'll now head on. That is the last Alpine portal in this chapter. We're actually almost complete with the chapter. This is actually kind of crazy because I can remember way back to when I first played the game and how long it took me. Like I said, it took me about 12 hours to complete the game. That's including cutscenes, at least I assume. At least I assume it counts that, because I know the end of the chapter, your total your total time it took you to complete the chapter, where it says in your little stat thing, that's based solely on how long you spent in the verses. So, say you skip a bunch of verse, but you sit around for who knows why for an hour or so, it's not going to show up that it took you an hour to complete this chapter. It's going to count up your total verse time. So when you're going for whatever item it is, I don't remember, but there's an item you get for completing the game in under 3 hours. You want to do as little verses as possible, and you just want to clear out them as quickly as you can, which it's actually really easy. I did it pretty plain and simple. Even if you don't complete the game in 3 hours in your first time, you don't have to go from beginning to end in 3 hours. You just have to go through some of the chapters that took you a little longer and trim them down as much as possible, so that way you can get yourself to under the 3 hours. I don't remember what the bonus is, but I'll figure it out by the end of the playthrough, and I'll let everybody know. Because, as I stated before, this is going to be 100%, which is actually quite a big task for the first full playthrough I'm doing. I've got a couple other things that I have planned. Obviously, as I stated earlier, or I might not have stated earlier, I might have hinted at it, I don't know, but I'm doing the casual Sundays that I'm going to start. I believe I would have started, yeah, I would have started before this entire this episode would be viewed by anybody, because by the time I have this recorded and uploaded, it won't be nearly time. I think I'll have I only have part 2 up right now, not counting the announcement video, and with that I have part 2, I have part 3 recorded, and I totally just lost my train of thought, but that's perfectly okay, because right inside here we have a cutscene.
Who's there? You've played enough hide and seek, my scurrying little friend. Just a child? What are you doing running around Vigrid? You're certainly not dressed in your Sunday best. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words,
I'm gonna go on record right now before I even start anything really and say that I lied. Losing my train of thought is not a good thing. That completely defeats the purpose of what I said in the beginning of this segment that I wanted to accomplish, was to keep my brain going on track, but unfortunately that's not the case. I didn't mean to get hit there. Oh well, it's not too much of a consequence. Anyway, so what we have here is essentially another Fortitudo fight, and he is not lost his other heads and whatnot, as you're actually right about to see. Once you get his HP down to a certain amount, he completely breaks up the chapel, and now we're flying. And there's his other head, and there's his freaky face. This fight is actually much... It's not easier than the first time you fight him. It's definitely just as easy, in my opinion. Well, it's a little more difficult because there's more stuff you have to dodge. You can't cheat it by standing there and just spamming the ever-living crap out of your guns at the beginning, so all he does is he shoots fireballs. But this one requires you to, forces you to dodge things. However, you still only have to hurt him a certain amount before you go on, and then it's just a couple of quick time events, and boom. And this is actually the end of the chapter right here, which unfortunately leads into the next chapter, which is one of my least favorites. Oh joy, do I hate that chapter so much. And I will explain why once I actually go through the next chapter in the next part.
I should have been a pole dancer.
And this is just more proof that practicing a game before you actually go on and record it has its benefits. I have platinum after platinum, and I think I might have gotten a gold on chapter 1, but that has yet to be seen. I have, by the time I've recorded this, I have kind of forgotten my scores and whatnot, and I can't check my scores in game yet because I have not completed the game. But anyway, without further ado, that is the end of this segment of Bayonetta. Thank you for watching, and please leave a comment and subscribe. Thumbs up this video if you do all that stuff, and in the next segment I'm recording, I will hopefully remember to change up Bayonetta's costume to something different for a little bit of variety.